Broadcasting from the most confused, dumbed-down, manipulated nation on the face of the planet, with all of the news that they hope and pray you never hear. This is the Power Hour. All right, this is Dave.
And Joyce, and I have been waiting all week for this program, ladies and gentlemen, because I learned from a caller who was in New York City, who called me and said, I understand that you have some information about this guy, Dr. Bruce Fife. And I said, yes, we do. And he said, well, I live in New York City, and I just heard through the grapevine or something that there's something called oil pulling. And I said, yes, there is. And he said, well, he's written a book on it. And I said, oh, my goodness, I was so thrilled. Because about a year ago, I started talking to you all about something I had seen on CureZone.com, which was this oil pulling therapy. Well, lo and behold, Dr. Bruce Fife, who is an expert in my opinion, got a hold of this idea also, and I think he went out to try and, prove that it didn't work. Well, what he found was it does work, and we're going to find out about something that in 20 minutes may change your life. And so I want to say thank you very, very much, Dr. Bruce Fife, naturopathic physician, for joining us today on the Power Hour. Thank you, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
It's a pleasure to see that somebody took a hold of this idea and wrote a book about it. But first of all, tell us a little bit about your background. We know of you from all the coconut oil issues and palm oil issues because you're an expert on that, and you've written a book called The Detox Book, which we carry at the Power Hour. But what was your background and your epiphany into all of this, Dr. Fife?
In all the health aspects, well, I'm a nutritionist and naturopathic physician, so I'm interested in health. And I started off doing the detox book and focusing a lot on detoxification. And when I had my clinic, I focused a lot on that. And then I learned a little bit about coconut oil, which really intrigued me. And so I started to investigate it because at that time, coconut oil was considered a dietary monster, a saturated fat that would clog your arteries. Mm-hmm. And the information that I had seen said just the opposite. And so I was curious. So I started to investigate this. And as I went to the medical studies and started looking up coconut oil and medium-chain fatty acids, which are the primary fatty acids in coconut oil, I saw a whole new picture emerge. In fact, what I found was that coconut oil was a very healthy fat, and I was shocked. And so I was so enthralled with all this information I learned about coconut that I had to write a book. So I wrote The Coconut Oil Miracle, and that was my first book on coconut. And that led to another book on coconut and to another book on coconut, and then one on palm oil, because I learned in my studies with fats and oils that palm was also a good oil. It was different from coconut, but it had its own health benefits. And then I found oil pulling, which is a whole story in itself.
It is. And you know, when I first saw it on CureZone, I love CureZone. I go there all the time. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've not been there, CureZone.com, CureZone.com, has every kind of non-traditional remedy, treatment, whatever, and they don't sell anything really, so it's more of a site that they can get away with it anyway. But let me just say that I saw this thing called oil pulling as a therapy, and I thought, oh my gosh, what in the world? That sounds disgusting. So I went to the site, read it, and thought, this has got to be a joke. How did these people fall for this in the first place? Now, was that sort of your response when you first heard of this?
That was exactly my response. I've been on some forums and such, and people would comment about this oil pulling therapy, and I didn't know what it was, and so I went on some of these sites to learn a little bit about it, and like you said, it sounded totally ridiculous. Basically, oil pulling is rinsing your mouth out with a vegetable oil. And I thought, well, how could this cure arthritis or osteoporosis or do any of these other miraculous things that people were claiming? And so I dismissed it as bunk, And then I kept hearing people with these testimonies that oil pulling helped them with this and with that. And I finally kind of got frustrated, and I thought, okay, I've got to decide once and for all, is there anything to this oil pulling or not?
Mm-hmm.
So I determined to study everything I could find on oil pulling until I had an answer. And so I did. I searched everywhere to find information on oil pulling. And as I was doing this research, I was impressed by a few things. One was the multitude of testimonials. Now, I know that testimonials don't prove something, but when you have hundreds of people claiming that a therapy has helped them overcome various health problems, you've got to take notice.
Yes.
And another thing that would impress me very much was when these people were using oil therapy, oil pulling, many of them experienced a healing crisis. Now, that's a sign to me that something definitely is happening.
Now, that I did, and I have to tell you, listeners, I was doing a whole lot of detox items at one time, and I had a healing crisis at one point that really shocked me. This is a treatment that, if I were to say to you, if you can do something for 20 minutes a day that only costs you the amount of money that you would spend on a pint of coconut oil, would you do it? Would you be willing to do it? And just as we had an attorney who is fighting the FTC on the program, James Turner, on the previous program, he says, I don't care why it works, but if it works for you, then you ought to be able by the First Amendment to say that it does work. And I have read so much about oil pulling, and we're going to have one of the Power team members come over here in a few minutes that's going to talk to us about this also, because having read this book and seen how powerful this is, it doesn't help 100% of the people, but what if it did help 90 or 95%? Something you need to know about. So as you were doing your study into this, or as you were looking into this, you saw these magnificent testimonies, which I've heard and I did experience. For instance, let me just give an example. Asthma, diabetes, arthritis, migraine headaches, chronic illness. Now, who wouldn't want to get better from those items for something that only takes 20 minutes?
Definitely. And, as I was going through this, at first I was really skeptical because the explanations that were given on the Internet were too fantastic to believe. They explained that this oil magically drew toxins out of the body, or they drew it out of the blood vessels under the tongue. And scientifically, this just didn't make sense to me. And so I approached this very negatively because of these unscientific explanations of why it worked. But as I began to study it, I saw a clear connection with oil pulling and why it worked with previous studies I had done with coconut. And the connection was that our mouths are a foci of infection through bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Our mouths are teeming with billions of microorganisms, and these microorganisms actually enter into the bloodstream where they circulate throughout the entire body. So if you have any dental issues, if you have bleeding gums, if you have an abscess, if you have decay of any type, even decay in past where the tooth has been filled or capped, it's also allowing openings into the bloodstream that can absorb this bacteria. And this bacteria, the bacteria in our mouth love to live in different parts of the body. So inside the mouth, the bacteria that grow on your teeth is different from the bacteria that grow between your teeth, which is different from the bacteria that grow under the tongue, which is different from the bacteria that grow on the tongue or on the roof of the mouth. They like to have their own little communities. And when this bacteria is absorbed into the bloodstream, they also like to colonize certain tissues of the body. So some bacteria will colonize the joints, and some bacteria will colonize the blood vessels. Some bacteria will colonize the heart or the pancreas. And when they do this, they cause inflammation and infections and problems in these areas of the body. So this is why a person can develop arthritis due to an infection or from the bacteria in their mouth. And as I researched this, I knew about this connection, and so I researched it more. And many of your listeners are probably familiar with Weston A. Price.
Mm-hmm. Weston A. Price Foundation, ladies and gentlemen. We've had him on the program many times.
He had done research in this back before the 1920s, and they actually published a large 2-volume set of books containing over 1,000 pages of studies on this topic of how oral infections or oral bacteria can migrate into the body and cause brain abscesses, can cause heart failure, can cause arthritis, can cause diabetes, colitis, osteoporosis. I mean, this is all documented. And he wasn't the only researcher. There were other researchers throughout the United States who were publishing information at that time on this topic.
Okay, we've got a 4-minute break. We're going to come back with Dr. Bruce Fife, and we're going to show you and tell you how to do this in your own home. It's very, very simple. And we're going to talk about transferring bacteria from the mouth in an animal and let you see how this really works. We'll be right back. So we're talking to Dr. Bruce Fife today about the oil pulling therapy. Oil pulling, oil swishing, whatever you want to call it, I'm telling you, there are so many people that are getting incredible responses from it that I know you're going to at least want to try it. Now, we haven't even talked about the relationship to dentistry and to what it does to your teeth, but there is a really excellent chart in the book, Bacteria Commonly Found on the Human Body and in the Mouth. And this chart makes you realize just how many millions and millions of bacteria there are. Well, if they get a home in there and they get started in growing there, then maybe they're contributing to disease more than we've ever known before. Now, Dr. Fife, is that not the reason that you think that oil pulling seems to work, that it's related to the amount of bacteria in the mouth?
That is exactly the reason. I mean, the mouth contains billions. There's more bacteria in your mouth than there are people living on this earth. And so there's so much bacteria, and this bacteria absorbs into the body. Believe it or not, but 98% of the population has some level of gum disease or tooth decay. And this allows the bacteria to enter into the bloodstream. Therefore, virtually everyone is susceptible to the harmful effects of the bacteria in their mouth, regardless of how clean their teeth are. And that is why oil pulling is so valuable, because it cleans the mouth better than brushing your teeth or using mouthwash.
Okay, let's go into what oil pulling is, because now people are wondering, no, wait a minute, how can your mouth have anything to do with your cardiovascular health or cancer or multiple sclerosis or any of these things? Why don't you explain the process of oil pulling with coconut oil?
Well, it's very, very simple, and that was one of the problems, I think, with it, is because people see how simple it is. They don't see how it can work. But basically what you do, now I prefer to use coconut oil for oil pulling. You can use really any type of vegetable oil, but coconut oil to me seems superior because of all of its health benefits that other oils don't have. So what you do is you take a spoonful of coconut oil and you put it in your mouth. And the amount of oil you use depends on how much you feel comfortable in your mouth. And you just put it in there, and like a mouthwash, you swish it around, push it and pull it through your teeth, your tongue, and you do this for about 15 or 20 minutes. Now, at first when I say that, people say, wow, that's a long time. Yeah, it's a long time, but if you do other things at the same time, the time goes quickly and you don't even notice. So you could read the paper, get on the computer, read your email, read a book, prepare breakfast, and time goes really quick. Once you've done that for 15 or 20 minutes, spit it out. And I suggest you spit it in the trash and not down the sink, because the oil will clog up the sink over time. So spit it in the trash, then rinse your mouth out with water, and go ahead and get a drink of water. One other thing I'd like to mention is that be careful if you go on the Internet and look for information about oil pulling, because there's a lot of wrong information on the Internet. I highly recommend you read the book, because it gives the correct information, the correct procedures on how to do this. A lot of the taboos that they have on the Internet make no sense, and they're not accurate. For example, they say you have to do oil pulling without drinking or eating and stuff. But it's actually better that if you take a drink of water before you do the oil pulling, because you want to stimulate the saliva. You want to be well hydrated before you oil pull, because the saliva is healing and helps to normalize the pH and other things in the mouth. So you do want to take a drink. But another thing is that oil pulling is recommended before eating. Well, in general, that's true, because if you're not accustomed to putting oil in your mouth, when you first do it, it'll be a little bit strange. And for some people who don't eat much oil, they may be a little bit disgusted with the oily taste in their mouth. Mm-hmm. But as you do this every day, it becomes less disgusting. I had no problem doing it because I eat a lot of coconut oil and fat in my diet anyway, so it didn't matter. But for other people, it may take a few days to get accustomed to.
It's unnatural, is sort of the way it is when you don't take a lot of coconut oil. Now, after this break, you're going to hear from Jessie here at the Power Hour, who did it for the first time last night, and I want you to get her reaction to doing this. All I can say is you've got to have the book, Oil Pulling Therapy. It's only $14.35, and if it changes your life, well, that's the best $14.35 you've ever spent. We'll be right back. 3-minute break. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. This is Dave.
And Joyce, and I want to thank you for joining us in the Power Hour today, and I want to thank you for purchasing from the Power Hour. Now, we have not talked about the palm oil, the red palm oil with Bruce Fife, which we want to get to and touch upon that, because it is an amazing type of fat to use that improves blood circulation, protects against heart disease, protects against cancer. It improves blood sugar control. I mean, it does so many things. Red palm oil is amazing to cook with. If you use it in your food, frying your food can actually make it healthier for you, believe it or not. Like potatoes, fried potatoes, stir fry with red palm oil and coconut oil, either one. I use them interchangeably many times, and sometimes I use both. But the book, Oil Pulling, is a must. I mean, this is a must. Even if you want to buy it and find out it doesn't work all that much for you, it's going to do something. It's going to clean out your mouth, I guarantee you. Not that you have a dirty mouth, but everybody does. Now, we have in the studio with us one of our Power Team members who did the oil pulling for the first time last night. Now, Bruce, as you know, when you start to talk about this kind of thing, people look at you like, oh my gosh, where has Joyce gone wrong this time? And they tend to think, oh, this one, now she's been right on a few things, but this one's like really crazy. Well, people were kind of surprised at me, and so we had one taker on this because she picked up your book, and I want to introduce Jessie to everybody. Jessie picked up the oil pulling book, and she said, I can't put it down. Now, what was it about it, Jessie, that got your attention?
Well, actually, I was about 10 pages into it and realized all of the bacteria that was in my mouth, and I'm like a real clean freak when it comes to my mouth, and realizing that brushing and flossing and everything really wasn't even taking the bacteria down made me just want to go home and try it.
And so she tried it last night for the first time, but you said you couldn't quit reading this book. Have you pretty much finished it?
Oh, yeah, I finished it in an hour yesterday.
That's amazing. And the book is called Oil Pulling Therapy. Now, what happened now, first of all, did you find it a little strange to be putting a tablespoon of coconut oil in your mouth?
At first, when they were, putting oil in my mouth, I thought, I don't know if I'll be able to do that because I'm kind of a texture person, but it really wasn't that bad at all because I like the taste of coconut oil, and 20 minutes really does go by fast when you're doing other things. Like I washed my face last night and was swishing coconut oil, so. Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing it, it liquefies, and you don't even realize it's just like a liquid in your mouth, or like a sort of liquid oil water after that. But you really don't even think much about it, do you?
No, not really. It's just, you just keep swishing, and then it gets easier and easier, and then it turns, you're supposed to wait, I guess, until it turns like a milky white, and that's how you know that you're you're swishing effectively. So.
And then you spit it out.
Yep.
I'm proud of you, Jesse.
I am too. I was really amazed.
Yeah,
Now,
Jesse came to the Power Hour about a year or so ago, and of course, a lot of the stuff that we have here, a lot of the products were like anybody. If you've never heard of this stuff before, it's like really alien to you. I mean, it's totally different from anything that you've been told and you've been brought up with, you know. And Jesse, I'm sure you were sort of the same way, weren't you?
Well, yeah, I was kind of
skeptical.
Blinded by everything, really. I had no idea. I mean, I'm only 23, so I'm still kind of young, and all the stuff that I've learned out here, it's just amazing.
Now, what happened? You said that after you did the oil pulling, you had a response to it. What happened?
Well, actually, today I have, this may sound gross, but it's kind of mucusy, kind of hacking up mucus, and they said that pretty much is already detoxifying my body. It's pulling toxins that fast from doing it just one time.
Wow. Let's ask Dr. Bruce Fife. Is that a response to doing oil pulling, to have a lot of mucus?
That is one of the most popular type of responses, and that happened to me the very first time I did it, too. I was able to cough up a lot of mucus and clear out my sinuses and my throat of this disgusting stuff. And when you start doing it, when your readers or your listeners start doing it, that is one of the typical symptoms they'll get, or one of the cleansing processes they'll go through, is getting rid of this mucus.
Now, that's pretty amazing, doing it only one time. And you are very healthy. I mean, you probably keep close to a vegan diet or vegetarian diet and probably don't do a lot of unhealthy things. But for you to also have an impact from this or an experience from this, that's pretty amazing, Dr. Fife.
You know, that is very interesting because I do eat very well, and I do go through lots of detoxes. I do a lot of fasting, up to 30 days, you know. And when I did the oil pulling, I was amazed that I went through a cleansing crisis almost immediately, and it progressed from getting rid of this mucus to my voice actually went on me. I had laryngitis for a couple of days as my body was cleansing these toxins out.
Yeah, it is really incredible. And there's a number of testimonies in this book that are so compelling. I mean, you read these, and I have to ask you, how did you find the testimonies that came forward, the people that came forward in this book?
I just went on the Internet. I talked to people who have called up, and we've talked about it. They've tried it. And so I've got them here and there from everywhere.
Well, you know, and one thing I wanted to mention is that when I was doing it with, and I stopped doing it, and I'm not quite sure why, but I was doing it at one period of time using a drop of peppermint oil. Now, I notice in your book you recommend 1 to 2 drops of oregano or clove oil. Now, why would that be?
Well, you know, for a lot of people, putting the oil in their mouth is disgusting because they just can't handle it. So I do recommend for those people that are starting off, that have a hard time, if they want to make the oil a little bit more sweet or tantalizing, to put in a little peppermint or spearmint oil, a drop or two, and it makes the oil very tasty. Now, my recommendation for the oregano oil or the clove oil is for people who have some dental issues. I have in my book a formula called medicated coconut oil, which includes a couple of drops of clove or, oil or oregano oil, because they are very antiseptic. They will kill the germs in your mouth, and that's why I recommend it.
Yeah, we need
now, you don't always have to use that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, you don't have to use it at all if you don't want to, and
right.
we will talk about the effects of the dental on the mouth from the standpoint of the teeth in just a second. But I just want to say thank you to Jessie for coming in today. Now, Jessie, will you continue doing this, do you think?
Yeah, actually, I think I'm really interested into continuing it and see pretty much the outcome of what it's going to do.
How many times do you recommend that a person do this a day?
For basic maintenance purposes, once in the morning before breakfast. But if you have some health problems, some dental issues, then I recommend that you do it up to 3 times a day before meals.
Mm-hmm. And how long is it usually before someone starts to see some kind of positive result?
It could be a couple of days, or it could be a couple of weeks, or a couple of months, depending on the person and the conditions that they have.
Okay.
But one of the very obvious things that happens when you start doing oil pulling is the improvement in dental health. Your teeth will get whiter, your gums will get pinker. Not inflamed, but they'll be a healthy pink. Your breath will smell better. If you have a chronic bad breath problem, that's because you have populations of bacteria in your mouth that you should not have, and this will get rid of that. If you have tooth decay and such, this will all help improve the mouth tremendously.
You have testimonies in here regarding hormones, regarding fibromyalgia, diabetes, blood sugar. It seems too good to be true when you look at it, but I think once you read this and you understand the mechanism behind it, which you really do need to read the book to find out why. For instance, the cases of aches and pains of the body, neck, and head, allergy problems, skin problems, digestive problems. You'll start to see sort of why the underlying principle works for doing this oil pulling step by step. So I thank you, Jessie, for joining us today on the Power Hour. And you're going to keep doing it, huh?
Yep.
Good girl. Well, thank you so very much for coming over and sharing that with us.
All right.
And Dr. Fife, let's talk about the dental issues. Let's talk about what it does for the teeth when you do this.
I'd like to just touch on Weston A. Price again, because he did so much in establishing a lot of the basic groundwork for this and really introducing me into the connection between oral health and systemic health. In his 2-volume set that I mentioned a little bit earlier, he has many studies in there where, for example, a patient came to him who had crippling arthritis so bad that she had to use a wheelchair. Well, he suspected that her root canal was infected, even though X-rays didn't show any infection present. He was, at this time, suspecting that root canals always remained infected, no matter how well they were cleaned and disinfected. So he pulled the root canal from the patient. Well, within a few weeks, this lady actually healed from her arthritis to the point that she no longer needed her wheelchair. Her hands improved, that she could do needlepoint again. But even more amazing than that is he took this tooth that he extracted from her and he disinfected it, he washed it off, and then he inserted it under the skin of a rabbit. Within days, that rabbit developed the same crippling arthritis that the woman had.
That's what I was referring to at the break earlier, taking something and putting it under the skin of an animal. Think about that, taking a tooth and putting it under the skin of a rabbit, and what happened?
The rabbit developed the same health problems that the lady had. Now, this is just one study. He has hundreds of similar studies. He would take patients, when he took the infected teeth of a patient with kidney trouble, the rabbit developed kidney trouble. With eye trouble, the rabbit developed eye trouble. Heart problems, ulcers, bladder infections, colitis. He had a patient that came in that had colitis so bad that he had bowel movements every 30 minutes. Well, he removed the infected tooth. Well, this person, over a couple of days, all of a sudden healed from his colitis. He took that tooth, he washed it, and then inserted it in a rabbit, and that rabbit developed severe colitis.
This is incredible. This is like a missing part of what we should have known all along, and explains so much about why we might be ill. Think about that, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever particular type of bacteria growth you have in your mouth might be causing that particular type of disease. And then to think that he takes a tooth out of the mouth, puts it under the skin of an animal, and they develop that problem. This is like an aha experience.
Definitely, yes. So this bacteria, that we have in our mouth is constantly coming into our bloodstream and collecting in different parts of the body. Now, as I mentioned, it can collect in your heart. It can collect in your joints to cause arthritis. It can collect in your blood vessels, and it does. And when it does that, we have bacteria in our mouth that cause plaque to form on our teeth. this very same bacteria, when it gets into our bloodstream, will attach itself to the inside lining of our arteries and cause plaque to develop inside the artery wall, thus forming atherosclerosis, leading to heart disease, heart attacks, and strokes.
Amazing. Just amazing. To do something for 20 minutes that might be the causative agent or remove the causative agent from many of the diseases that we have. Now, there's only one rule, and that is don't swallow the coconut oil. That's really important, ladies and gentlemen, because once you dislodge all that bacteria, you don't want it going down into the gut. Now, let me open up the phone lines here real quickly. If there's anybody who has a question or perhaps has done oil pulling out there that would like to give a testimony, the testimonies are what we would really like to hear right now. 800-259-9231. Unfortunately, we'll only have time for a couple. 800-259-9231. Now, is this something that you are doing on an ongoing basis, Dr. Fife?
Definitely. I do it every day. I'd also like to also mention, I talked about Weston A. Price. I mean, he did this back in the 1920s and published this research, but research right now is also going on. We have studies that are being published today that also confirm this connection between oral infections and heart problems. In fact, if you go to a dentist, if you have any heart problems, they are required to give you antibiotics to protect you from the secondary infections from your mouth. Mm-hmm. This is well known in the medical world.
That's right. Absolutely. And the risk of getting pericarditis as a result of having teeth work done when you have an infection is very, very well known and documented. One other thing I wanted to mention is the heavy metal detoxification that you focus on page 142.
Yes, unfortunately, we have something called amalgam fillings that have been put in our mouth. Now, amalgam fillings are primarily mercury, and as you know, and most of your listeners know, that mercury is very toxic, extremely toxic. So why do we put it in our mouth? Well, it's going to emit vapor that we absorb into our bodies that are going to cause a lot of health problems. And so I also include in the book a mercury detox that you can do if you still have mercury fillings in your mouth.
Excellent. And I know also you have a good listing here of the food's potential for tooth decay. And I know that it's not just necessarily sweet items as we might think, but this is really a good educational book for children also. Wouldn't it be great to start children? Because I know you mentioned how much bacteria is in a child's mouth, and already they have the potential for developing caries or dental cavities as a result of that. We're going to be right back after this 3-minute break. We'll take a couple of phone calls, 800-259-9231. Have you done it? Did it work? Give us a call. We'll be back with Dr. Bruce Fife. This is Joyce and Dave.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the final segment of today's installment of the Power Hour, coming up on 55 minutes past the hour, whatever hour you're sitting in. This is Dave.
And Joyce, and we got a bunch of callers here for Dr. Bruce Fife. I want to go through them as fast as we can. Alan in Nebraska, you're up. Go quickly. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I think that it's amazing, absolutely amazing, the similarities between the seemingly miraculous powers, and I mean attributing that to God, of the oil pulling, the clay, and the super silver, which all are helped by the frequency, the fact that they don't have to come in direct contact. It's like they trigger something in the body. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the links between the clay and the pulling on the detoxing is amazing.
It is. Yahweh God is so incredible. I mean, we have no even concept of what all he's done. Hey, thank you very much, Alan in Nebraska. I got to move on. Jan in Missouri, you're up. Go ahead, please.
2 questions for Dr. Fife.
Okay.
One, in reference to the individuals that had their root canal teeth pulled, were they pulled when they needed the root canal, when it was flared up, or after the root canal was done?
Okay, Dr. Fife.
That's very interesting and very important because in most cases, the root canal was not inflamed. They would do x-rays, they would do visual inspections, and they could find no trace of an infection present. But when the root canal tooth was actually pulled, then they saw the evidence of the infection. And basically, what they discovered was that 100% of root canals are infected to one degree or another. You cannot get rid of the infection.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Dan from Missouri. Erica in Oklahoma, you're on the air. Go ahead, please, Erica.
Hello.
Go ahead, please.
Hi. I just wanted to find out. Now, this is like coconut oil that you switch with? Okay. I wanted to find out if you can do it while you're pregnant or nursing.
Oh, good point.
Oh, that is an extremely good point. Yes, definitely do it while you're pregnant and nursing. Now, it's not going to cause any harmful problems. What it does, it removes the bacteria that cause problems. In fact, studies have shown that mouth bacteria can cause many problems in pregnancy, including preeclampsia, and cause low birth weight babies. So if you can oil pull and remove this bacteria from your mouth, your chances of a healthy delivery are improved.
Oh, very good. Thank you very much, Erica.
Awesome stuff.
Put the oil in your mouth, swish it around for 20 minutes. Do not try to gargle it because it's too thick. And you will be amazed. Put it in your mouth for 20 minutes. If you need a drop of peppermint oil or thieves oil or something, try that. Bruce in Florida, final caller. Go ahead, please.
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
Yes, I was calling to find out if this has been known to benefit someone that has a prostate or an enlarged prostate.
Okay. Dr. Frank.
Yes, I've heard some people that have prostate problems benefiting from this.
All right. Thank you very much.
Give it a try.
Okay, thank you for the phone call. Do it once or twice a day. Do it while you're watching boring debates like Palin and Biden. That's a good thing to do it. And, do it during watching the news on TV, except for it might make you choke on it. But, no, I'm serious, ladies and gentlemen. Just try it. Everybody can do this. It's cheap. It's inexpensive. Just get the book. Best coconut oil you can buy, and it's at the Power Hour, along with the book, Oil Pulling Therapy. Dr. Bruce Fife, thank you for writing this book, sir.
Thank you for having me on the program.
You betcha. We'll have you back on, and we will do red palm oil, I promise.
Folks, get your coconut oil, get the book, get yourself educated, get yourself healthy.